Hey guys, Saf coming at you with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Now you might be wondering, why did I release a video 3 hours ago on the champion training efficiency and not include the Forge Pass that we had released today? Well, I recorded it last night after stream. And of course, the Gods Imperium decided that me having to grind crazy amounts of campaign was just not enough work, that I had to go and basically be faced with a brand new Forge Pass this morning, also with a brand new set, the first variable Forge Pass set, which is a bit awkward. We're going to talk about that in a moment. So of course the Forge Pass set brings with it its own XP boost. You can see I've already got the Forge Pass right now, 10% experience and silver gained, which means all of the numbers that I've calculated yesterday are now out by 10%. And the way that this calculates with the Forge Pass is very complicated to understand originally, but once you figure it out, it's pretty straightforward. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to first look at the Forge Pass. We're going to look at the new artifact set to see whether or not it's actually good. And we're also then going to take these numbers and update our spreadsheets we've been working on, the one that I released earlier and also the one that I released yesterday. We're going to update them and include this 10% XP bonus in there so you can see how much it impacts your energy. So first things to mention here, this is a Rathalos set. I would not put this set on Rathalos. This is a Monster Hunter set essentially. I've known about this set for about 3 weeks that it's been coming. I haven't known the details though, because the description of the 9 set bonus was a little bit vague in the way that the description matched the actual battle engine. Obviously, I'm able to see the skills, so I can see exactly how it's coded and how it's meant to work, and it didn't seem to match up. So I waited for it to come out and released, and now we can actually take a look at the set. But first, let's have a look at the Forge Pass. This is pretty good. As always, any Forge Pass that you get, if you are a very low spender or a mid spender, or if you've just started the game and you're like, do you know what, I'm having a lot of fun, I may want to spend a little bit, then this is one of the best purchases you can get alongside the daily gem pack because of the volume of 6-star gear that you're going to get, right? Look at all this legendary forged materials. This is going to allow you to craft 205 rank 5 to rank 6 with rank and rarity charms. That's going to give you a substantial amount of rank 6 gear. Even if you don't actually build many big sets out of this, you can get yourself some really good gear, which is often the first hurdle for a lot of players, right? You got to sort of make your first rank 6s, build up your first few teams, and then it's about gearing. You've got to go through the grind of Dragon to get speed gear. You've got to go through the grind of Fire Knight to get damage gear, so you can climb the Doom Tower, then you've got to farm for lethal gear. This kind of accelerates that process for quite a good price point, at about $20. You also get lots of different things in here. You get some silver, which is really nice. You also get some forge materials, more silver here, lots of magisteel. So if you haven't done a lot of arena, you can replenish your magisteel. And then of course the materials. Now, what is different with this Forge Pass is this is a variable set. We've never had a craftable variable set. We've only ever been able to craft the top artifacts. We've never been able to craft accessories. Now, when I saw this in the code, I thought, oh, we're going to be able to craft accessories. That is not the case, and I think this is a major flaw in this artifact set. You're going to be able to get, in total, 3 rank 6. That's what it's going to give us at the capstone. We're going to get another 3, so that's 6. And I think we get 2 banners, 7, 8, 2 amulets, 9, 10, and 2 rings, 11, 12. So if you buy it, you're going to get 12 accessories. If you don't buy it, you get a bonus, like 2 rings here, but I mean, that's 5-star. It's not so good. You're probably going to vendor those if you're late game. More 5-star and more 5-star. And I think you might get like 3 and 3 here. So pretty much, if you're a late game player, the free rewards, you're going to sell most of them because they're 5-star gear. They're not very good. I've been trying to suggest this quite a while now for Plarium, that 5-star gear, when you start getting into hard Hydra, when you start climbing Doom Tower hard, when you start doing Cintranos hard, those types of players are not interested in 5-star gear. They're vendoring it. They don't have the storage for it. There's too many powerful sets for you to stick around and hold onto it. At best, they're holding onto their triple roll 5-star gears. They're going to go for the 6-star. So pretty much the only valuable accessories are in the paid version. You only get like 12. That you're not going to be able to build a set, right? We've got 16 factions. You can get any one of these unless it's going to give you one of each. So imagine it gives you one of each. You're going to get 1 ring for 1 faction, and it's only going to have 1 stat type. How the hell am I meant to be? That you can't build a set around this. This needs to be like times 5 for it to be even possible to build a set. Right now, I've run basically 2 full, nearly City of Cintranos. If we minus a few of the bosses in Soulcross, I've pretty much completed 2 full hard mode Cintranoses and 1 full normal mode, and I'm halfway through, I'm starting to progress to the normal mode. And I've not been able to get 1 single 9 out of 9 Merciless set with all of the volume of accessories we've got in those 2 months. In Hydra Clash, it's been on for, we've won some, we've lost some, but I still have not been able to acquire a single 9 out of 9 protection, or 9 out of 9 stone skin. So in that context, these accessories, you're going to have to be with that one person that kind of did Hydroclash the first day and look, oh, I've got a 9 out of 9 protection Emic, who got super lucky. These are not enough volume. I don't really understand why we've gone this route. You're just creating a set that realistically I'm only ever going to be able to consider as a 6-piece set. Now, that being said, it's still a variable set. So we can have a look at the quality of a 4, 6, and 9-piece. That's kind of how you'd look at variable sets here. So we can have a look at the quality of the set there. But I would definitely suggest that Plarium should review this, because you're basically going to have to run 5 months consecutive of this particular set before we even get close to what I would call an averagely okay 9 out of 9 set, which diminishes the whole point of a variable set. The whole point of the variable set is I'm meant to be able to have those options. Well, I'm not going to have them. There's just not enough quantity. So ideally make them farmable, forgeable, or achievable somewhere else outside this Forge Pass, because if I have to wait for 2 more months because you're going to do a bolster and then a Defiant, it's just never going to happen, right? You've created too many Forge Pass sets now for it to be in a good cycle. Because we've got Defiant, we've got... Actually, let's take a quick look. So in terms of Forge Pass sets now, we've got Rathalos set, we've got Righteous, Defiant, Bolster, Instinct as Forge Pass sets. We've got 5 Forge Pass sets. So if they've rotated it consistently, we're only ever going to see one of these sets twice a year, maybe, on average. Twice a year. That is not enough for a variable set. It's absolutely fine for a normal artifact set because we can, craft up to 200 per set. So I'll have the materials to be able to make substantially more of the 6 artifacts that I need. So there's a very good possibility that after 2 Forge Passes, I'll be able to get a good component to make a 4 or 2-piece sets. That's pretty much how I've experienced it. After 2 Forge Passes, I've pretty much got what I need to be able to make some sets. This, you're just not going to have enough. It's not a very good model for a variable set, in my opinion. Now, I've still purchased it this time because I know I'm going to be doing a huge amount of training. The actual 6 or 4 piece is not as bad as, it's pretty good, right? Just because I can't get the 9 piece, I don't think I'll ever get the 9 piece. I do think the 4 and the 6 is quite good in various different options. So what do we get for this set? Let's take a look. Someone has been able to get some of these pieces already and sent me this, which is really handy. You're going to be able to get 5% crit rate for 1 piece, 15% crit damage for 2 pieces, and 5% speed for 3 pieces. Now, this is a pretty good damage-orientated set. Crit rate, crit damage, speed. It's kind of what you want these days. And then at the 4-piece bonus, this is the first effect that we're going to get. Fills this champion's turn meter by 5% per each enemy hit by AoE attacks. Now, that's pretty strong, even if you're not dealing damage. If you think of a Necmothar, he attacks AoE all the time. In Hydra, he's going to basically get turn meter fill every time he attacks, because he's going to hit 4 enemies. Each one is going to give him 5% per enemy hit. If you think Spider, if you attack all 10 enemies, that's going to give you 50% turn meter fill. It's very strong if you need to be rotating back to abilities very quickly. Whether or not it actually adds enough value is a whole nother question, because if you think of Necmothar, is he going fast enough already? Are you just consuming Hydra clan boss turns you could be using for a damage dealer? It does beg the question, but certainly from an AoE attack perspective, if you're trying to rotate your damage dealers more efficiently, someone like Vladimir, who has double AoE, who's also trying to sort of steal turn meter and all that kind of stuff, a passive that gives him turn meter, this is just investing further into his rotational ability, especially when we look at the other bonuses. So that's the 4-piece. Then at 5, we get 10% crit rate. At 6, we get 30% of the enemy's defense ignored when using AoE skills. So that's the Savage effect. They're basically giving you Savage, Cruel, Ignore Defense on the 6-piece bonus. So that is the artifact sets. That's what I think we have to assess as one effect. And then if you get lucky and you can get 9 pieces, which is incredibly lucky. I mean, I've got more probability of getting Rathalos to hit for 33 million in Hydra than I have of getting 9 out of 9 in one champion with all the right substats that I require. That's just the reality. So the 7th bonus, you're going to basically double your crit damage to 15%. So it's going up to 30%. You're going to gain 5% more speed. You're going to have this effect, which I'm going to break down in detail of how it's going to work. 30% chance to repeat the damage you have dealt by AoE skills. Now, here's the big thing to take away with this. This is very AoE dependent. This is why I say it's not very good for Rathalos. Rathalos is going to do an A1 single target, an A2 single target, and A3 AoE. And then the next time he's going to do 2 AoEs because A1, the A2 becomes AoE. So out of 6 abilities, he's only AoE-ing half the time. So you're punishing yourself on top of the fact that his A2 is already 100% ignore defense against bosses. I don't really see the value in calling it Rathalos set. It's not really for Rathalos. It's a Monster Hunter set. It seems like it's a very good set for anyone who does AoEs on all abilities. Someone like a Supreme Kale, very good for. Those kind of AoEs, Uko could be quite good because you get turn meter back all the time. You kind of don't really need to go further than 4% if you're not a damage dealer. But the 4%, the 4 pieces is very good for anyone who needs to rotate their abilities with an AoE A1. For example, if you do get lucky and you're able to get 2 of the accessories, you absolutely could run an AoE A1 stun champion, like in stun set, with this set. So you'll be able to give yourself turn meter on a wave. It's like 25% turn meter back, and try and stun them all at the same time. It's very powerful if you can set that up right. But like I said, you've got 12 accessories to basically share across 16 or 17 factions. I can never remember how many. And you've got to hope that you can actually match them, and you've got to hope the primary stat works, and then you've got to hope that it's going to roll you the substats you want. That's the main problem for me. The 7, 8, and 9 bonus is basically forgettable because I don't think you're going to have enough materials. But the 4 piece is very good. And then the 6 piece is also very good if you want to just invest further in your damage. But it actually has to be, you've got to remember, you are sacrificing the ignore defense overall for turn meter fill. Because if we think how a lethal set would work, you're getting 4 pieces, it's giving you 10% crit rate and 25% ignore defense, and then you're getting a bit of attack and ignore defense on cruel. You're basically trading for a crit damage set with a little bit of speed for AoE turn meter, right? So it's more rotational. It's pretty good. I think it's probably better for defense-based and HP-based champions, because you don't really want to take cruel for that extra ignore defense, but you really want that ignore defense. This would be a pretty good option for someone like Ragash, Staltus, Soulless. People like Taras would be interesting because it could potentially make his A3 very strong, but you really lose the ignore defense on his A2. So unless you're really going to be able to get to 9 pieces, it's not probably that. I'd probably keep with the lethal for Taras, because the A2 is very important to his ability. Now, let me just explain how the 9 out of 9 bonus works. It's going to have a 30% chance to repeat the AoE attack. Now, what it means by repeat, it's going to take 100% of the damage, and it's going to deal 100% of the damage to all enemies again. It's going to repeat the attack. It will ignore defense, so it's going to do the exact value you did before, and it is fixed. So can't critically hit again, which basically means you can't do what you do with Trunda, in the sense that the first hit gets re-multiplied in Hydra. That's not how it's going to work. The decapitation bonus, for example, won't apply twice to that repeated attack. It will just be whatever. If you hit 50 million, then the next hit will be 50 million. If you hit 1,000, the next hit would be 1,000, the repeats. It's going to do exactly what you did on that first attack. Now, I do think, based on the code that I've seen so far, and obviously I haven't had the set to test it, but if you have Hex, because of the nature of Hex, where it deals damage to all other enemies every time you do damage, when you repeat the attack, it does mean, I think, that the 2% is going to proc again. So if you attack for 1,000, then 2% of that 1,000, because it's an AoE ability, will be applied to all Hex heads. So 2% of 1,000 is about 20. And then you're going to attack again for 1,000. Then I think the Hex is going to happen again. So I think you're going to have it twice. So that's a pretty powerful effect. So in Trunda's situation, what we're going to get here is an example. I've shown Trunda on the screen as a build. You're going to attack the first target. 60% of that damage is then going to be spread to all other enemies. So that's the first damage percentage. Hex is going to trigger off that first AoE and the first single target. Then that AoE is going to have a 30% chance to repeat, and then the Hex is going to happen again. So the real question that someone is asking me, if I drop my lethal gear, which is basically 30% ignore defense standard, in favor of a chance to roll again, is that better or worse? Will this set make Trunda even more OP than she already is in Hydra? So I pulled up my spreadsheet, which is my old clan boss estimator. It's a pretty good way of me estimating a single target hit and doing some rough math off it. So you can see I've got a brief build. I don't know how realistic this build is for a lot of people. I'm just trying to think of what I've seen in terms of Trundas in Hydra. I've got 7,000 attack, 300% crit damage as a build. And we're going to first look at what it's going to be if I'm in Savage or Lethal with 1 Cruel set, with War Master, and I've got Crushing Rend at 6-star. Basically, I've got a 6-star Trunda. Let's have a look what this can do. So in this chart here, you're going to see lots of numbers. It's a very confusing chart, but don't worry about most of the stats here. I'll show you what's really important, right? What we're going to do is we're going to first focus on the ignore defense amount. So because we've got Savage Cruel, that's 30%, what we can do is we can then go, well, there's 20% area bonuses. So we can add 20% here. And we've got Crushing Rend, so we're going to add 31% because the level of the boss is 310. So our bonus ignore defense is 51% on top of our Savage Cruel, which gives us 81% ignore defense when we attack. Now, this could be optimized further with a Helm Smasher, but we'll have a look what it's like without Helm Smasher first. We'll just have a look what War Master is, just so we can do a comparison. Now, I've picked the second tankiest head in Hydra, which is the Head of Decay. You could go even lower and pick the squishier heads, but just use 6259 as a percentage comparison, right? So that means that because I'm ignoring 81% defense, I am going to be ignoring 23. My damage is going to be reduced by 23.1%. The multiplier for the A2 is 6, and it hits a single target once. And we're going to hit a decapitated head, so we get a 200% multiplier, which is multiplied by 3. And there's 20% bucks here as well. So this is all the information that Trunda's build will have. So we can put this in here, we can map out the A2, we can put the multipliers in here, and we can basically get an estimated critical hit damage on the target for a single target hit, which is somewhere between 943,000 to 1.1 million damage, or averaging about 1 million damage on that Trunda A2 hit. That is how much she would hit on the single target. 60% of that will get transferred over to the AoE. So I've built a little bit of a calculator here so we can have a look at some of the components. So we're going to take those numbers, and we're then going to first apply the first hex component. So then it's going to actually double up our damage. Why? Because the way that hex works is 10% of a single target hit is sent to all hexed enemies. There's going to be 3 enemies that didn't get hit on that first attack who have hex, and let's assume all of them are decapitated, right? This is how Trunda teams normally work. We have everyone decapitated, everyone's got weaken, and everyone's got hex. You know, it's pretty much easy killing spree. So we're going to basically take 10%, we're going to multiply it by 3, because hex, the damage component, gets multiplied by the decapitation bonus. You get bonus damage. And then we're going to multiply it by 3, which is the number of heads that are left for that single target that didn't get attacked. So you've got 4 heads, you attack 1, 3 of them are hex, 3 damage components. So that means that we're now going to be doing 849,000 damage through the first hex component. Then we're going to take 60% of that 943,000. Then we're going to reapply all of our multipliers, all of our masteries, critical damage, bucks, weaken. It all gets reapplied. And we're also going to reply it by the damage reduction. Now, one thing we need to do here, because it's an AoE, I haven't done it right now in the math, is we need to reduce this damage based on the Hydra's AoE damage reduction. Now, that is somewhere between 34% and 54%, depending on whether the Suffering Head is out. So let's just assume this is the worst case scenario and the Suffering Head is out. We need to reduce this by 54%. So we're going to be doing a 12.9 million to 15.8 million AoE hit with this build on all of the Hydra heads. Now, again, this is getting multiplied by decapitation twice. That's why we're getting such a big number. Now, for the second component, we need to take a third of this value, because this value here is multiplying it's basically the total of the AoE attack. It's all 3 heads. And we need to divide it by 3. Then we need to multiply it by 2%, because AoE hex is 2%, not 10%. And then we need to multiply it by 3, which is the decapitation bonus. And in this instance, instead of giving us 3 amounts of hex, we're going to get 9, because you're going to attack the first head. That's going to attack all 3 other heads. The second head, the remaining 3 heads. The third head, the other 3 heads. And we're attacking 3 AoE enemies, because the A2 second attack is all other enemies. So this works out around about 2.3 to 2.8 million. So in essence, this build with this Trunda in War Master, the way that we set it up, is going to do somewhere between 17 to 20 million per A2 if all heads are decapitated and they all have weaken and they all have hex. Now let's change the set over to Monster Hunter, and let's see how much that goes up to. So interestingly, it's not changed a thing. It has not changed a thing. It's exactly the same amount of damage. Why? Because we are reducing the initial hit. What makes Trunda so powerful is the larger the single first hit, the stronger the AoE will be, because it's 60% of a base damage. So if you can inflate the base damage to such an extent, you will do so much more damage. This is why, for example, when you're using Sun Wukong, if you can kill a target with 1 HP, you're going to do substantially more AoE damage, because the AoE multiplication effect is going to be greater because you've got bigger raw damage to work with. So because we're reducing our ignore defense capabilities by dropping the Savage, because essentially the first hit is not AoE, so it doesn't get the 6-part bonus, when you go to Monster Hunter set here, you're able to replicate it, assuming it lands. But keep in mind, it's only a 30% chance. So if you don't get that, in essence, you're going to do 9 million damage, not 17 million, if you don't get the AoE. Now, there is something to change here. So if I put it back into Savage, but instead of War Master, let me put it into Helm Smasher. Why is Helm Smasher important? Well, Helm Smasher, if it procs, pushes us into true damage. We actually, if we have Crush and Rend, full maxed out area bonuses, we have Savage Lethal, and we also have Helm Smasher, well, we go into true damage territory. Now, if you take away the Savage and go back to this, you're at 81%. Okay, so if we are in Savage right now, how much does Helm Smasher proc affect the overall outcome? Well, we're now going to hit for 28 to 34 million. So if you're running your Trunda in Warmaster, you should absolutely change it to Helm Smasher, because actually we have more ignore defense than we require. I'm manually capping the calculation here, but when you work it out, if you have 30% plus 25%, that's 55%. Then you add in the area bonus, 20%, that's 75%. And you add in 31% crush and rend, you're over ignore defense. You actually have a little bit of flexibility there. But 28 to 34 million if you're in that set. Now, if we change it out of this and we put it into Monster Hunter, 33 to 40 million. So if you're in Helm Smasher proc and you can get to this 81% bonus damage, then you're going to actually do a lot more. It could be better. It will lead to more. 33 to 40 versus a true damage hit of 28 to 34. It will be more, because the problem you've got, if you don't have the Helm Smasher proc and you go back to Warmaster and you are hitting the Monster Hunter, you're actually on 56% ignore defense, which means the target's defense is kicking in. It's now at 44%. It's absolutely kicking in. Now, keep in mind, this repeat attack here, it's fixed damage. So it'll always do exactly what you did the first time. And then this repeat hex attack will fire again. We've actually got a bit of a calculation error. Let's just take out that one there. We've actually just got slightly too many hex hits. It will drop the damage a little bit, but it shouldn't make a difference. It should be the same across the board. So yeah. So what are we taking away from this? Is it good for Trunda? Well, depends on your build. Like if we take away this back and if we bring it back a little bit and go, okay, well, I don't have Crush and Rend. Maybe I only have, like, I don't have a 6-star Trunda. Well, now we're going to lose 31%, right? So now we're down to 20%, right? And then we take away the Savage set. Well, we only have 25% ignore defense bonus here. Now we take away the Savage Cruel set. We only have 20% bonus here. So now we're actually going back down, and we can see, based on this, we're actually having 62% of our damage reduced. Well, we're doing 8.1 to 9.9. And then if I go and put the lethal set back in this current setup with a Cruel set, we're actually doing 8 to 10. So it's about the same. So you wouldn't want to trade the consistency for the chance of a repeat attack. So I think it only really benefits the ultra strong 6-star Crush and Rend maxed out area bonuses, where you can actually start getting to the more true damage source to actually make this work for a Trunda, because the first damage is contingent on single target, and that's where you define how big the hit is going to be. You almost want to make the single target the powerful effect. The bigger the single target, the larger the AoE, the more damage you're going to do, and then the more damage everything else is going to scale off the back of that. So it's a bit of a breakdown of how that passive works, how that set works. The last thing I want to talk about is the XP boost. If you get the pass, you will start with 10%. You won't be able to get this 19% probably before the end of the Alatrian Heroes Path. So I'm not really considering this, but if you think about it, if you do all the weekly challenges, it's going to give you 12, 24, 36, 48, 60. So that's going to give you 6 bonus levels. So we'd be at level 8 right now. And then we've got 2 more resets. So that would give us, I think each reset gives us 2 levels. So that would be level 11 and level 13. You're not going to get to this boost. It's just not going to happen. So we're going to need to see, what does 10% bonus experience do to our calculations? Now, the first thing to understand before we get started is how is this boost working? So whenever you are doing training, you're gaining a base level of experience for completing a campaign stage, for example. So imagine you're doing, I don't know, 12-3 or something like that. I'm gonna use random numbers here. This isn't the numbers that you're gonna see. This is just numbers I'm using to show you how it's calculated. So imagine you complete a battle and you get 10,000 champion experience. Well, the XP boost is going to multiply this by 2, right? That's what a boost does. The boost simply multiplies it. Okay, so we're going to call this the base. This is the times 2 XP boost. Then if you have a raid card, it multiplies this combined total. So the raid card would basically come in here and go, okay, well, I've got this. I'm going to times it by 1.2. So it would put it to 2400. The XP boost is not another multiplier, right? In an ideal world, you'd think, okay, well, I'm going to get 10% more from the Forge Pass. Well, that's just surely going to multiply this by 1.1. So it gives me a little bit more. So I'd get 26,400. And then, of course, what happens when you run through a campaign, the total amount of champion experience is divided amongst all champions in battle, whether they're max level or not. So we would take like this number, say like it's 26,400, we divide it by 4, which means every single champion will get 6,600 experience. That's what most people would assume is the way it's working. But that's not quite what happens. Up until this bit here, this is accurate. This is how the calculation works. You take the base, you multiply it by 2, and you multiply it by 1.2 if you have the raid card, right? That subscription you can take out that gives you 20% bonus campaign experience. What the Forge set does is it gives you 10% additive bonus of the base. So we get the base figure, we multiply that by 0.1, so it gives us 1,000. It gives us 10% more on top. It doesn't multiply the final, it adds it on top, which means now what we actually get is, instead of that, we get a sum of the raid card bonus on top of the 10% bonus as an additive value, and then we divide that with 4. So we actually, instead of getting the multiplier, we're getting 2,500, not 2,640. Then we divide that with 4, which means instead of 6,600, which is what you think you'd get, you're actually getting 6,250. So the Forge bonus is just almost like 10% of whatever the base is on top of your leveling. It's not actually multiplicative 10% bonus, it's an additive 10% bonus. So that's how that is calculated. So we can take that into our calculations and have a look to see, does it modify how much we're going to need for the Alatrian path? How does it affect our tools? How does it affect our calculations? And we can have a look now to see what that is going to mean. So if you've seen my video from a few hours ago, you'll have seen this experience efficiency chart. It is a chart that you can make a copy of and you can modify so you can see how it's going to work and how it's going to show you how much experience you need, how much experience is remaining, how many runs you require. And I've added now onto the side here a Forge Pass bonus. So you can choose between all the different bonuses and you can have a look to see what it's going to do to your numbers. So for example, if we wanted to make a rank 3, in order to do this, let's just turn off the Forge Pass a second. Let's put it to 0%. We can see the difference here where, okay, 1 run would get us to level 11, and that's about an 8.25 point per energy. That's how much we would need. And there's about 177,000 XP remaining after we run that. If we enable 10%, you can see actually we are going to get a little bit more value here because it's going to push us over and we're going to get level 12 in a run. So we're going to gain an entire level per run. Now this is going to cause an energy reduction in how much you need because you're going to be able to get more points for less energy. Now it doesn't always help you in all things. So for example, if we look at the level 2 here, you can see that right now with the XP boost on, we're going to need to run 1 run. It's going to get us to level 11. If we turn it off, it doesn't really change anything. It doesn't change anything at all. All it's going to change is some adjustments down here. We're still probably going to run it once if we're partially leveling. In terms of like maxing it on Nightmare 12.6, it's still going to take us 4 runs. We don't save a run at all. You can see it. All it means is down here, we're going to get to level 19 quicker. We're going to end at the end of this with 16,000, with 8,000 left to be able to level. So use this to basically figure out how that Forge Pass is going to modify your runs. In rough estimates, the Alatrian path, it's going to save you, that 10% experience is going to save me doing both sides about 2,000 energy of my 30,000 or 40,000, I think I estimated it at. So on the champion path, it was about 22,000. It'll probably save you about 1,000 energy. Now, whether or not that's worth it, it depends, I think, on the set. I wouldn't be buying this Forge Pass set just for the XP boost because you can't really take advantage of it until you get much higher, right? If we were to look at how it works as you scale, when we get to 50% bonus, which is what you really get to, you can see it pushes you a lot further then. Because now if we want to level a rank 2, we can do it in 3 runs. That's the difference. So once you scale it, it's great. But the problem is, with all of these Forge Pass experience boosts, it's always backloaded. You're not going to get 20% of it. You're only going to be at 30% for the majority. You're not going to get 20% until like week 3. So you're not going to see a realization of the 50% throughout the entirety of the Forge Pass. So there you go, guys. New artifact set. I bought it because I actually think that the 4-piece and the 6-piece sets here are probably worth it. If I'm being honest, I think the Rathalos set here, where can I see this preview? I think these sets here are probably worth it in terms of the bonuses that you gain. The chances of you getting a 9 out of 9 is just impossible. Like if you get it, congratulations, you've won the lottery. Because to get 3 good accessories in 3 different slots in 1 faction, all of them giving you the right primary stat that you require, is just absurd. I know you can chaos or some of it, but I mean, you're still running the lottery. It's absurd to do it in 12. There's 820 champions in the game. There's 16 factions. There's like so many different types of champions. The chances of you getting exactly what you want from 1 is impossible. We're going to need, I think, at least 6 Forge Passes if they're going to give us 12 accessories. If every single time we're going to get 12 accessories, we're going to need at least 6. at least. And I just can't see how that's going to work because you've got 4 other Forge Pass sets. So are you going to have like pick your own path? Are you going to make it so that I can pick the set I want? Are you going to be doing these much more regularly? Are they going to be available in the game somewhere? You know, I think that's what you've got to be mindful of, player. And when you do these things, when you add a new set, you want us to chase that set, and then you give us very little effort or very little ways to acquire a set in meaningful ways. Merciless, for example, we're probably going to need 4 months of Centranas before we can make a, like, I've been lucky I've been able to make like a 6-piece Merciless with 1 accessory. The chances are I'm going to need to run Centranas at least 5 months before I can get a 9 out of 9. Now, some people might say, look, you shouldn't get it instantly. I'm not saying you should. I'm just simply saying if you're buying something to build a 9 out of 9 variable set, I shouldn't have to buy it 5 times before I can build a single champion. That's too far. This needs to be available. Make the forge craftable. Allow me to forge here, maybe, instead of us just having the default. Maybe you should have thought about this and gone, I know, why don't we offer a way to switch the forge to accessories and allow me to use my materials to make accessories instead of gear? Because eventually I'm going to get to a point where I have more gear than I have accessories, and all I want is the accessories. So then you might have problems where people will go, well, I don't want to buy the forge pass anymore because I only need the accessories. I don't want the main gear, and I'm never going to get the accessories I want. This needs some thinking, Playroom. I like the concept. I'm absolutely not against having variable forge sets. I just think you can't have it so that the accessories are only purchasable and you only get 12. 12 is just not enough. It's just nowhere near enough to make a set. So we'll see what it thinks. Let me know in the comments below, guys, what you think about this. As I said with the Trunda math, it kind of doesn't make her better. I don't think it's going to really like make it worth it, especially when you need 9 out of 9. So it's kind of like, it was an interesting math equation. But yeah, I don't think it's very worth it. It is a very powerful set if you get everything right aligned, and it could be very good. If it does activate as well, it's a 30% chance, it's not guaranteed. Yeah, it's a powerful set. I actually think its value more is in having a 4-piece turn meter set for getting back around to your champion's abilities much quicker. Being able to maybe run your freeze champion in finite a little bit faster because they get 5% turn meter fill, right? It's not much, but maybe that's enough for you to warrant to do it because you can find the extra sets. Maybe you're running it in Spider, you want to get back onto your provokes quicker, like 50% turn meter fill every time you AoE. That's pretty powerful. Iragoth, there's pretty good for. There's 4 enemies. Those sorts of things I think it'd be good for. Potentially when you're fighting in Dark Fae, you could use it to like nuke your allies and then get 50% turn meter back, or I think it's, 6 people, so 30% turn meter back. There's lots of situations where you're fighting lots of waves that having your ability to get your turn meter back is very good. That's where I think the biggest value is, which is why I bought it. Purely because, one, I want to experiment with it and test it so I can see maybe I'll get lucky with the accessories. Maybe I won't. One thing I definitely would say is don't buy the extra levels. Don't get baited into this. You'll acquire this in, like, you'll have the level 50 before you finish rank 3, like week 3. It's so easy to get these maxed out. Don't waste money buying it instantly just because you want to see what it's like. It's not worth it. 24 accessories, but we know the rank 5s, we ignore it. So there we go, guys. Thanks for watching, and I kind of apologize for having 2 videos out on the kind of the same topic today, but in the end I just didn't want to re-record the first video because it had a lot of good content in it this morning. I'm just going to update it in this video here. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.